Hey there guys, in this video let's build a user login and authentication system using a Node.js Express server as the backend and React.js in the front end. I'm super excited about this mini project tutorial because there are not a lot of tutorials out there which show how you can actually sign users up in your app and save their data in a database. One thing I would like to say is this tutorial is not completely for beginners. I mean, you need to have coded a bit in Node and you need to know some stuff about React, like about the use state hooks and stuff like that. If you know that, this tutorial is right for you. I will walk you through all the steps in complete clarity. And by the end of this tutorial, you will know how you can create an authentication system for your app and sign users up. Now let me show you first what we are building today. I'm not going to add much styles to it as you can see here because this is not really a CSS tutorial. So when a user first signs up into your app, he wants to register in your app, he or she needs to fill in a username and a password, and this username has to be unique across the app. Now, this register form is for new users who will register in your app, and the sign-in form is for users who have their data stored in the database and they want to sign in. Now, let's create a user. Let's name him John Doe, and let's give it a password and register. User logged in. So if you want to see it, let's just go there, and in the Mongo process I want to clear it out. Oops. Clear. Start the Mongo process. Show databases. Use db test db. That's the database we are using. Oops, not use db. Use test db. Let's write collections the database has. Show collections users. So db dot users dot find. Okay, this is a bit too much information, but if you see right here, this is our user we just logged in. See, the username is here. The password is actually hashed because a password is a sensitive data, and even the developer who built the app should not have access the to such sensitive information. So I did register with the name John Doe. So let's sign in with John Doe, and let's give the password I just gave. Sign in, and it signed in. Now if I try to register with the John Doe username again, let's give it the same password, it will say authentication failed because the username John Doe already exists. So that's the build we are going to build today. Hope you are excited, and I also want to show you something. Say we have a username like this, and we give a password of only 4 characters. It won't register the user. We have to give a minimum of 8 characters. So register and user logged in. So I hope you are excited for this build, and the link to the code base will be down in the description. And I hope you're really going to have a lot of fun making this build, and I also hope that you are going to learn a lot from this tutorial. So let's get started. Just before we jump in, I want to clear out a few steps we need for development. For this tutorial, you will need to have Node.js installed. If you don't, go forward and search for Node.js in your browser, and I'll do that right here. The first link should be that of the Node.js organization. Click it, and you have to download one of these two options. Okay, so you can choose to download any one of these two, but the LTS version, this version, is much more stable. Right now it's showing 16.13.0. If you are watching it at a future video, this will be something greater, the version. So you have to go to this website, nodejs.org/en, and you have to click on this particular button. So after it installs, I'll just wait it. After it installs, just click on the installer, and it's just a click next installers. I have Node.js installed, so I don't have to do this, but you just need to just accept and just go forward with whatever it prompts you to do, because it's just a click next installer. It's really easy to install Node.js. So I'll just cancel it because I have it installed, and okay, that's it. We will start with the backend server. Now I know a lot of full stack developers like to start with the front end first, but what I like to do is create the basic bare bones of the server. You know, the basic API routes I know I will need, setting up the database and all the stuff like that. So let's jump right in. So what I want you to do is you need to go to the directory where you will write your code. I want you to right click, and here you can see the open with code option. Note, for the open with code option to be there, you need to have Visual Studio Code installed. So if you haven't, just go onto the browser, write Visual Studio Code. It's a free code editor software and you can download it pretty easily. So hit open with code, and yeah, Visual Studio Code opens. So what I want to do is I want to create a directory, name it backend, and I want to create another directory. Oops, not inside, outside, and write front end. So the backend directory will hold all our backend code, and the front end directory will hold all our front end code. Now right now we are not dealing with front end, we'll just deal with backend. So what I will do is I'll create a new file and name it app.js. The app.js will be our main file which we will run to run our server. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, before we write any code, I want to talk about NPM. So NPM stands for Node Package Manager, which allows us to use third-party packages developed by developers worldwide in our applications so that we can develop our own apps smoothly, and we don't have to bear the headache of building each and every part of our application from scratch. So the NPM package we need to install is Express. But before that, we have to initialize our backend directory with npm. To do that, I'll just click on terminal and open a new terminal. Here if you can see here, I am in the code directory. Now I need to go to my backend directory. So I'll cd means change directory, backend. Now you can see I am in my backend directory, and here I need to initialize with npm. So I'll write npm init. Now npm comes with Node, so if you have Node installed, you will have npm installed. Okay, so npm init, and I'll hit enter. So this will start initializing our backend directory with npm. So I'll just keep hitting enter. Right? Yes. So what npm init does is it creates a package.json file which will have information about all our all the npm packages we install and use. So the first npm package we need to install is Express. So I'll write npm I express. Well, Express has installed, and we need to import the module into our app file. What Express does is it helps us create a backend server. So when we talk about an Express server, we mean an Express server running on Node.js. So I'll close the terminal and I'll import the module. So we'll write const express equals require express. Oops, express. Yep. Then we need to call the express function and store it in a constant called app. I'm naming it app. You can name it whatever. So express parentheses. Next, we need to make sure that Express recognizes all incoming requests as a JSON object. So we write app.use express.json. Now we need to define the port where our backend server will run. Right now I'll write 8000. Now we need to call the listen method inside app. Here we called the use method. Now we need to call the listen method. And the listen method now takes two arguments. The first argument will be the port, and the second argument will be a callback function. Now the callback function will run only after the app starts listening on this particular port. So after the app starts listening, we want it to console log. These are backticks. It helps us write dynamic strings. So I'll write app started listening on port, and we'll write dollar open close brackets port. I'll save it, and now what I'll do is I'll reopen the terminal and I'll write node dot forward slash not forward slash sorry app.js. And as you can see here, we have the message log to the console that app started listening on port 3000. I'll come out of the folder. I'll come out of the process. And what I'll do now is I'll reorganize the backend folder a little bit. I'll create a new folder called src, and all our source code will lie inside this src folder. So I'll just drag and drop src inside. I'll just drag and drop app inside the src folder. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is, as we installed Express, a new folder called node modules was created. What node modules does is it holds all the npm packages we install. And if I just go forward and search for Express, here it is. See, Express has been installed as a package. And we'll also see that inside our package.json file, it's listed under dependencies, Express version 4.17.1. Now, I'll just rerun node app. Now, to run this, I'll have to write node./src /app.js. Because the app.js is inside our src folder, and currently we were at the backend directory. Now there's one problem if we write node./src /app.js. If I change the port number and save it, it will not refresh itself. What we have to do is we have to come out of the process and we have to rerun the program again to make it listen on port 7000. This is quite hectic, honestly, and development becomes quite annoying if you have to rerun node every time. So there's an npm package which makes the process easier for us, a bit easier for us. It's called nodemon. So I'll cancel out of the process and I'll write npm I nodemon with a global flag. Global flag, why? Because I want nodemon to be available globally. I don't want nodemon to be available for just this project. So I'll have the -g flag and I'll hit enter. Cool. So what I can do now is I'll write nodemon./src /app.js. And what this did right now is it started listening on port 7000. And see, it says right here watching extensions JS, MJS, and JSON. So if I change anything in this file, say I'll make it 3000, Nodeball will detect that change and it will restart because we made these changes. If I make it 8000, it will change again. So Nodemon is the handiest tool I use during development. Okay, so now let's set up our database. We will be using MongoDB and we'll be using a local server of MongoDB. So to do that, first I need you to go to Google and type in MongoDB, or better, MongoDB community server. Yeah, click that and just click on what platform you're on. If you're on Linux, if you're on Mac, just go forward with the MSI version. The zip version is a bit difficult to manage with respect to MSI. So just hit download. It will install an MSI installer and it will be just click next installer like Node.js. So install that. And now what we need to do is we need to, in the backend directory, we need, no, sorry, in the source directory, we need to make a new file and name it db.js. It will hold all the information related to our database. So I want you to open your terminal again and go to the backend directory and write npm I mongoose, because mongoose is the npm package which helps our Node Express server link up with our MongoDB database. So that's installed. And now I want you to write const mongoose equals require mongoose module mongoose const connection URL, that is the URL for you to connect to MongoDB database. Now the URL here is mongodb :127.0.0.1:27017 followed by the name you want to give to your database. So right here I'll write test db because that's the name I want to give to this database. So in the next line you could write mongoose.connect, that is we are calling the connect method of mongoose to connect to the database. It again has two arguments. The first argument is the connection URL, so connection URL, and the second argument will be a JSON object. Use new URL parser will be true and use unified topology will be true. Save it. And in app.js, go forward and require the db.js file. Save it. And now before you run nodemon app.js, you have to run mongod, which will churn up a local mongod server. So go forward and hit it. And we'll have to hit, now we can hit, let's go to backend and then hit nodemon./src/app.js. Let's see, app is listening on port 8000. And if we go to Mongo, open a new PowerShell window and hit Mongo, and if we write show dbs, there's nothing yet, but in Node we can see that our app is listening to port 8000, which means that there is essentially no error, which means our app has connected to the MongoDB database. Okay, so we have done setting up our database, and now we need to write the user model. So what I need you to do is go inside your src folder and make a new folder called models. Now inside model, I want to create a file called user.js. This user.js file will hold all our code for the user model. Now, so we need to install some npm packages. First, let me just go to our backend folder. Then let's just do npm imongoose. I think I did it, but there's no harm in being careful. Another one I'll need is bcrypt.js. So npm I bcrypt.js. Now, as that installs, I want to talk a bit about bcrypt.js. So, bcrypt.js is a package which uses hashing algorithms to help secure passwords. Salting and hashing algorithms takes a string as an input and outputs an encrypted string which kind of looks like gibberish. And you cannot reverse this output string to find out what the original input string was. We will use this to store passwords in our database. Now, when a user tries to log in, we will hash the password and compare it to the hashed string stored in the database. Hopefully that makes it clear. So, another npm package I'll need is JSON Web Token. So I'll install that really quick. Okay, so let's require these npm packages. Use script. JS. JWT require oops, not JWT, JSON Web Token. Cool. Now we need to write a schema for our model. So const user schema is equal to new whose dot schema, and here we need to write the fields of our schema. So the first field will be username and its type will be string. I want it to be unique because every user should have a unique username, so unique will be true, and required will be true. Unless you give a username, you cannot save a user to the database, so required will be true, and trim will be true. What's trim? Trim is, suppose when you are entering the username, you enter a few spaces before your username. So what trim does is it trims those extra spaces at the end. So trim true. Now I also want to store password. Type will again be string. Required will be true again. Trim will also be true, and the minimum length will be, say, 8 characters. Now we also need to store tokens. What are tokens? Tokens will be used to verify if a user is already logged in or not, and it will be used in authentication also. So tokens, it will be an array. Oops, array. And each element of that array will be of type string, and it will be required. Okay, so, and I also want to store when the user was created. So I'll write timestamps true. This is our user schema. Now what I want to do is I want to save the schema as a model. So const user equals mongoose dot model. The model method in mongoose takes two arguments. The first argument will be the name of the collection we want to give, so user, and the second argument will be the schema, so it will be user schema, and we'll export the user module. This is our basic model of the user model. Now we need to do a few steps. Before we save a user, we need to hash the password so that the real password is not saved in the database. So let's just do that real quick. So user schema dot pre. Pre is a method which will be called before a user is saved to the database. So before I save it, I will run a callback. It will have the value next. Const user equals this. If user dot is modified password. So if the password has been modified, user dot password, we are fetching the password of the user and we will be hashing it. So bcrypt dot hash user dot password, user dot password, and we also have to say how many times we want to hash it. So an ideal number is 8. If you make bcrypt hash it too many times, then the process will become slow, and if you make it hash too few number of times, it might become a bit less secure. So the sweet spot is 8, and after that we want to call next. So that's it for the model for now. Now let's start writing the beginner API endpoints. To write the beginner API endpoints, I wanted to go into your SRC folder and make a new folder, call it routes. And inside routes, make a new file and call it user routers.js. To write our API endpoints, first we need to talk about how many API endpoints we need. Right now, I am thinking about 2 API endpoints. One will be to save users into the database. Another API endpoint will be to log in users who have their data saved in our database. So to do that, first we need to require the user model. So const user equals require, go back a directory, go into models, and there's the user file. Okay, we also need to require express, so const express equals require express const router equals, will invoke the router method of express, so express.router. Now the first route we'll create will be to create a user router dot post. It will be a post request because we are saving data to the database. The route will be /user/new. It will be an async function. So request response, and we will receive the user data from the front end as the body of the request. So I'll create a new object called user, small u minded, not the capital U up top, not that capital U, it's small u. And we want to instantiate this user object as a new instance of the user model having the data request.body. Now I'll be using try catch. So in the try block, we'll write await user.save. So I want to save the user. We need another function in our user model. What will that function do? That function will generate an authentication token every time we save a user, and save that token in a variable called, in a constant called token. So const token equals user dot. I haven't defined this function yet, but I will do that in just a moment. Generate auth token. Okay, there's that. And once that done, I want to give a status code of 201 in the response. 201 means created, and send the user and the token. So there's the try block, and if this doesn't happen for some reason, so there's the catch block for that. In the catch block, I just want to console the error. So before we make another route for logging in the user, let's just quickly create the generate auth token function. To do that, go to your user.js model, and before the save method you created, just write user schema dot methods. This is a custom method you are creating. Generate auth token equals async function const user equals this, const token equals to, now we will be using the JSON web token package we installed, JWT, JWT sign, and this requires an argument. The first argument is the ID, that will be user dot id dot to string, and the next argument will be a secret. Now you should never share that secret, because that secret is what secures this token. But I'm not posting the code for now, so I'll just give a very random token. It will be very random. Okay, this random string will be used to verify this token. It needs to be kept secure. Next we need to get the tokens array, tokens dot concat. We need to concatenate this particular token to the array of tokens that already exist. Token, and we need to await user dot save, and we need to return the token. So that was it for the create a new user route. We need to create another route for logging in a user whose data is already saved in the database. So let's create that route to login a user. It will be another post request because we'll be sending data from the front end slash user slash login. That will be the route. Async request response. We'll need a try block. const. Now we need to create another method in the user model which will take the credentials we are sending from the front end, and it will match it with the data in the database and return whether the user is authenticated or not. I haven't yet created the method, but I'll just write it. Await, oops, sorry, user dot find by credentials. That's what I'll be using right here. And we'll need two arguments. The first one will be the username, so request dot body dot username, and the second one will be the password, so request dot body dot password. Then we'll take the token const. No, before that, let's just define the find by credentials method. Go to your user model, and after generate auth token, create a new method. So use schema dot method dot find by credentials is equal to async. Remember, we took two arguments, so the username and the password. Const user equals await user dot find one. We need to find one user who has this username. If the user is not there, so if not user, we need to throw an error. So throw new error, unable to log in. We want the error message to be as vague as possible because we don't want to give excess information to someone who might be trying to illegitimately access a secure account. So we'll keep the error message as vague as possible. Then we'll check if there's a match. So const is match equals to await decrypt dot compare. We need to compare the passwords. So the first argument will be the password, which comes from the front end, that is the user input password, and the second one will be the password stored in the database. Now if there is not a match, there's no match, we'll again throw an error. So throw new error, another vague error message, and if there is actually a match, then we will return the user. As simple as that. So let's just run it again. The find by credentials is a method. It will take the username and password as two arguments. First, it will find if there is indeed a user with the username inputted by the person who is trying to gain access. If there is no user as such in the database, we will throw an error saying unable to log in. Now we'll try to find if there's a match. So bcrypt will compare the password inputted by the user and the password stored in the database. And this is actually the hashed password. And what bcrypt will do is it will hash the password inputted by the user, and then it will compare with the already hashed password. So if there is no match, that is if the password is incorrect, it will throw another error. If there is match, it will just return the user. Now let's get back to the route. We need to generate the auth token. So const token equals to await user dot generate auth token. If it's successful, we will send a status code of 200 and with the user. Well, we could also send the token. So user dot not dot user comma token. You see the curly braces there? It means we are sending it as a JSON object. So if it fails for some reason, There's a catch block for that, and in the catch block we'll give a status code of 500 and send the error. In fact, let's do that for this one too. Res.status 500 dot send error. That's it for this login route. And the last thing we need to do is we need to export this router. Now we need to create a middleware. What will be that middleware? It will be an authentication middleware. What will it do? Well, you see the routes we created here, like new, like the one to create a user or one to log in a user. It does not need the user to be logged in already. But if you think about routes like logging out a user or deleting a user's profile from the database, this needs authentication to be established beforehand. That is, the user needs to be logged in from before to be able to carry out these operations. For that, we will be creating a middleware. So to do that, go into your SRC folder and create a directory named middleware. Inside that, create a file named auth.js. Now let's start coding. The first thing we need to require is the JWT, or the JSON Web Token npm package. So JSON Web Token. Next, we need to require the user module. So user equals require dot slash. We need to go back a directory. Inside models, user. Now we'll create a function called auth. It will be an async function. Request, response, and next. It will have 3 arguments. Oops. In the try, there'll be a try and catch blocks. Try and catch blocks. Now const token equals request dot header. We'll check the header for an authorization token, which will be the same token created by the JSON Web Token npm package. So we need to find that header and we need to replace it with a bearer and then a space. Don't forget this space. This space is necessary, and if you don't give this space, it will generate an error. And the next argument will be a blank string. Const decoded. So decode JWT.verify. It will verify using that random string we created earlier. So token. The first argument is the token, and the second argument is that random string. And if I just go to my user.js, copy this string, paste it here. Now const user equals await user, not small u, capital user dot find 1. The ID will be decoded dot underscore ID, and the tokens dot token. Tokens is the array of tokens, and dot token is the current token. It will be the token. So if you don't find a user, we'll throw an error. Again, vague message, unable to log in. Then request dot token, token will be the token. Request dot user will be the user, and then we'll call the next function. if the user is not authenticated, send an error. The error message will say unauthenticated. That works. Now we'll just export the auth function. That's it. This is our auth middleware. And if we give this auth middleware to any API route, before carrying out the processes in that API route, it will first check if a user is authenticated or not. Now let's write the rest of the APIs and finish up with the backend. So we'll be writing two more APIs. The first one will be to log out an user, and the second one will be to get an user's details, both of which will be using the auth middleware. So log out user. It will be a post request. User/logout. That will be the route. We'll invoke the auth middleware. Then we'll write the function. Oops. So try request.user.tokens equals request.user.tokens.filter. What we want to do is we want to take the current token that the user is using and we want to remove that from the tokens array stored in the database. So token return token not equals token. This particular code block might not look that intuitive, but what it generally does is it takes the tokens array from the user and it filters out that particular token which is not the current token. Which is the correct token, sorry. So it deletes that token and returns the rest of the tokens. So now we'll just say await user.save. Let's give a status of 200 and send a message saying user logged out. Now if this doesn't happen for some reason, there's a catch block for that. I'll give a status code of 500 and send the error. That's our API route for logging out the user. And to get the user details, get user details router.get. This will be a GET request because we are getting information from the backend, the database, /user/me auth async request response, and we'll just send the user. With that, the bare bones of our backend is complete. Now we can move on to the front end. Now we can say that our backend is ready. Well, it's not finished or completed because there will always be minor tweaks and minor changes you could do to better your build. But right now we are at a point where we can stop thinking about backend and move on to the front end. So First, what I will do is I will delete the frontend folder. So go forward and delete it and create a new PowerShell window and type here npx. We'll be using React, so we'll be initializing React. Npx create React app, and make sure you're in the code directory, that is not in the backend directory. React app frontend, that is the name of the directory, and hit enter. Okay, so npm has installed React. That took quite some time. And before we start any coding in the front end, I would like to remove some files we won't be using. So app.js, we won't be needing that. Report web vitals won't be needing that. Set of tests won't be needing that. And index.js, just remove this part and remove the import. That's good. Okay, won't be needing the logo.svg. So in app.js, remove the import and remove whatever there is inside the div. In the public folder, don't need the manifest, don't need this robot, don't need these. In index.html, remove the comments, don't need the manifest, don't need this. Yeah, that's good enough. And let's just give a paragraph tag and write, say, sign in. That's okay, I guess. Now I'll cd into my frontend folder and write npm start, which is the script npm uses to start a React application. Give it some time and sign in. So it's working. It is actually working. Now first let's create a form which we will be using to sign in users. Let's just do one thing. In the source folder, create a folder called components, and inside components create a file called SiginFrom.js. Actually, let's call it RegisterForm.js, because first we want to create a form which registers new users. So RFCE, which is a snippet for React functional components. If you want to use snippets like these, you need to install an extension called ES7 React Snippets. Search it up, you will find it. So I'll hit enter, and that does it. Inside the div, I'll give a paragraph tag and call it RegisterForm. Under that, let's start form tag. Set that to a div, a label, username, input, type will be of text. I guess that works for now. Let's just give it a value too. Value can be username. Well, let's just not delve into that right now. And I'll just copy it, paste it down. It will be password, and the type will be password. Then there'll be a submit button. type equals submit, we'll call it register, save it, and in app.js under sign in, or let's just call it register, let's just import RegisterForm. It got auto imported, so I'll save it, go back, and here's our RegisterForm. I'm not styling it right now because this is not really a CSS course, so I guess you'll have to do that yourself. Let's just remove this. Now let's hook up the register form. Now I have two input fields, so I'll need two states. So const username set username equals use state. The default value can be blank, and there will be also one for password. So const password set password blank. In this input, let's give it a value of username and a placeholder of username. Oops, not like that. Username. And in the password, let's give a value of password and placeholder. Where's the comma? Placeholder password. Save it. Let's go back. Use state is not defined, so it will import automatically. Let's save it. Go back, and yeah, there's our little form. Now, to create a new user, we had made a particular route. Go right there. /user/new. Now to make API calls to the backend, I will be using an npm package called Axios. So open up the terminal, go to frontend and install Axios. That did it. So right here, const handle register. I'm creating a function to register a user. Let's take the event and prevent the default process. So const user equals, take the username and the password, and now make an Axios call. So Axios, the method will be post and the URL will be 127.0.0.1 colon 8000. That's where our backend will run. So colon 8000 /user/new. Isn't that the route? Yep, that's the route. /user/new. So that's the URL. We'll give it headers, content type, the type content, application /JSON, and the data will be the user object. Now the Axios call will return a promise. So then we'll get a response. What will we do with that response? We'll first console log that user was logged in. We'll take the token which is returned from the backend, and we'll set that token in the local storage. So we'll call that app token. So app token and if it doesn't happen for some reason, so I want to alert. Actually, let's alert here too. It will be clear. Alert authentication failed. Now we need to set the username to nothing and the password to nothing. Let's just copy this and do this here too. Save it. And yeah, I guess that's it. So let's try it out. First we need to make sure that the Axios is not defined. We need to import it. Cons Axios equals require. Oops, not like that. Sorry. That's the backend way. To import npm packages in the front end, we need to write import Axios from Axios. Yep. So let's make sure the backend is running. So npm run dev. Hopefully, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Node mon /src/app.js. The app is listening on port 8000. Cool. And our front end is also running. So username, let's just give it something like QWERTY. Oh, I'm sorry, we did another mistake. We need to set these inputs on change. So on change function, and it will set username to, it'll take the event and it'll set the username to the e.target.value, and it'll happen same thing with the passwords on change equals set password e.target.value. And one thing we again forgot was on click we need it to do the handle register function. So save it and let's try this time. Username devs and password I'm not going to tell you, and I'll hit register. Authentication failed. Okay, so why is that happening? I guess we need to give HTTP here. Let's try it again. Do devs password. I'm not going to tell you. Start authentication failed. Okay, so it's still not. Let's check a MongoDB process. Okay. Mongo DBs. Okay. Let's see what the console is saying. Okay. Okay. Let's just refresh it again and now try. Application failed, and it's a problem with cores. Okay, got it. What we want to do is we want to go in our backend. We want to open app.js, and before this I want you to paste a string, and the string is this. What it does is it allows cores is a system which stops front end from making API calls to a backend, as in the backend is secured that way. Now you need to make the backend allow API calls from a certain URL. If you look at the error message here, it says the API call to this endpoint is blocked from this localhost 3000 where our frontend is running. It's blocked by CORS policy, and to prevent that we need to specify in the backend which origins we want to allow making API endpoints to our backend. Currently we are giving it wildcard field, that is any origin from the internet can make a API call to our backend, but this should not be done. You need to give proper URLs in here, but for now we can use the wildcard field here. So I'll save it and let's try it again. Username devs, password, hopefully it runs, and okay, authentication failed. Now let's see. Error, connection refused. So there must have been yep, cannot access app before initialization. App.js 5. Okay, I'm sorry. You need to define it after app. Hopefully it will run this time, and this is actually how you should go about doing your builds, because you will face these problems a lot. Authentication failed. Why is that? 404 not found. Okay, I get what happened. So we aren't actually using the user routers, so that's a bummer. So let's just require it first. Require routes, user routers, and let's store it in the user routers constant and use it. App.use user routers. Save it, and now it should work. Actually, let's just make sure that it's working. It's not working. Auth is not defined. We haven't required it. So let's just okay. So let's just require auth const auth equals require. Go back a directory. Go to middleware. Put auth. Save it. Let's see. It's working. Frontend is working. Let's try and hopefully it will work. Register. User login. That's it. And how do you make sure that the user really logged in? What I want you to do is go to your terminal, create a new terminal, and type in MongoD. This will create the MongoD process. What I want you to note is to run the MongoD process, you don't need to be in your code or your backend or your frontend folder. It can be done from any directory. So type in MongoD and hit enter. It will start the MongoD process. Don't close the process and create a new terminal window and name it Mongo. I'm sorry, not name it, type in Mongo and press enter. So this is in your local Mongo server. I'll just type show dbs and there it is, test db. And if you go to your app.js, no, not your app.js, your db.js, here you can see we named the database test db. So I'll use test db, switch to db test db, and I'll write show collections users. So we know that it's functioning, and I'll write db dot users dot find, hit enter, and you can see it here. There's the ID of the user, there's the username of the user. The password is actually hashed, so this is a gibberish you can't figure out. There's the token which we are using for authentication. The token, each token have their ID, and the created at is due to this timestamp field we added in the user model. So that's it. We have successfully registered a user. So now let's go forward and look at how to sign in a user. Now let's see how we can sign in a user. To sign in a user, let's just create a new component and name it sign in form.js, RFCE for React functional components, sign in form. And I'll just copy all of this because a register form, a sign-in form, is very much similar to a register form. Change a few things. Oops, I guess I did something wrong. Yup, the whole thing. Yep. Now let's just change it with sign-in. Let's make this a sign-in form, and make this handle sign-in. Okay, sign in. Okay, so in app, let's just import the sign-in form too. Save it. One small change you need to make, the biggest change you need to make rather, is change the particular URL in the Axios call. So what I want to do is I want to go forward and look at that particular router. It's /user/login. So I'll go SiginFrom and change it to /login and save it. And okay, so what are not defined? Use state is not defined, Axios is not defined. Let's just import them. Axios and use state. Okay, so hopefully it will work. Yep, this is the signing form and this is the register form. Now let's just register a new account. So developers now, that's the username, and I know I will remember this password, so I'll just register. User logged in, and if I go to my MongoDB process and run db.users.find, you can see developers now is it's an account stored in our database, and devs is also there. So let's just try to register with developers now again. And you cannot do it because it says authentication failed. But if I do developers now here and give the password as password I did back then, sign in, it's saying authentication failed. That's it. Interesting. Let's see. Okay, let's just for now alert the error. Now let's try again. Request failed with status code 500. Let's console it here and see what problem we are facing. Let's try again. User.find by credentials is not a function. Okay, so we have done a mistake somewhere here. Wait, user.find by credentials. Let's go to our user model and see what we might have done. So user schema. Okay, not methods, it will be statics. Save it and try again. Developers now. Sign in. User logged in, thank God. Okay, so that's how it works. I hope you did understand, and yeah. Okay, so that's the end. Actually, that is the end of this build. I know it doesn't look good. I know it doesn't do all the funky stuff it's used to do, but it's not supposed to do that stuff. It is for you to understand how authentication has to be set up if you don't want to go by the sign in with Google path and you want to sort of have your own database and store your own user data and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this big video. This was actually a big video, and if you did, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more such content, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye folks.